ITD 130, week 10. Here's your assignment. Make sure you watch some PowerPoints first. And what you want to do here is what we're doing is we're going to work on constraints. So your buddy has taken ITP 225. That's our server-side PHP class, where they are setting up a web page for Pete's Paint. In his application, the user fills in the length and width of the walls, the color, the type, and the finish. Okay, and so what we have is a customer, we have a quote, and we have a wall. Pretty simple, straightforward little database, 3 tables. The MySQL database keeps track of the customer, the quote, and the walls in 3 tables. Your buddy gives you a copy of his SQL script, Pete's Paint without constraints. That's one you have to help get you started. You check out the ERD that he supplies above, and you realize he doesn't have any constraints on here at all. He also indicated that he had a problem in that he would like the customer ID, quote ID, and wall ID to be automatically generated by the database, since these are not values available on the website input. You tell him that you are taking ITD 130 and you're more than happy to fix his script. So that's the whole idea, okay? So the script is out there, okay? But it's also here. So let's look through this. The first 3 that we typically talked about. Drop database of exists Paint WO. You can take that off if you want, but that's without constraints. Create database Paint WO. Use it. Drop table of exists customers. Drop table of exists quotes. And if you notice in here, we do have the not nulls. Okay, the not nulls are there, but the primary keys are not, and the foreign keys are not. All right, and so if you look, we got not nulls on all these. That's wonderful, except that there are no other constraints in any of these. So if you run this, it'll run just fine, and you'll get the ERD that we have here. All right. So what you want to do is you want to add these constraints. All right. So these are the table. That's the column. That's what we want to name the constraints. Go back through the PowerPoint presentation I gave you that talks about how to name constraints. This constraint type, okay? And in the foreign key, we always have to reference something in the primary key when you do that. And then this kind of comments on what we need to do. Those are automatically generated. So those are our auto increments. That has to be unique, okay? He forgot to make the email not null when he created the original table. So you got to add that on. All right, when he created the original tables. The length greater than 0, width greater than 0. The email has possible valid email. Okay, it has an @ in it. Do some Googling on this. That one's going to be the toughest one. Okay, and we might just post a little bit in Discord to help you with that. So what we wanted you to turn in is a revised SQL script that adds a constraint. Okay, defined in that table above. The constraint must be named, must occur at the bottom of the table definitions, like we did in the PowerPoint, and I'll do an example or 2 here. We are naming the primary keys, even though MySQL does not maintain those names, unfortunately. This is a script is compatible in case we want to use different database. This is so the script is compatible in case we want to use different database. You cannot use any alter table statements. Let's put them all in the actual table definitions where they belong. And use a Notepad++, okay, or something. And so what I would do is I would put it into Notepad++ and try to add something and then run it, and add something and run it. And what's going to happen over and over, unless you're really good, okay, which I wasn't when I actually made the answer key, is that's why we have the drop the database. You run it and then you get an error message, and then maybe one of the tables got put in because the error was in creating the second table. But if you run it again, it will drop everything and you'll be fine. Test it before you paste it here. Okay, you have to test multiple. You may have to test multiple times. Okay, so when you create, so remember, you can run the database. Just run it, keep running it. It will drop the database and then it'll run it again. Okay, and you might want to make sure you keep backups as far as you got. So what you're going to turn into me is 2 things. One is your updated and properly formatted SQL script. Paste the text from your text editor or wherever, and a screenshot of your ERD diagram. All right, now we talked before about where you can get those, but to remind you, you can create these by the designer tab in PHP My Admin. Make sure it's laid out nicely and the constraints can be easily seen. You'll see the primary foreign constraints when you do that. All right, so if we go into PHP My Admin, which is here, all right, and let me show you that last step first. If I take something like zoo, okay? If you go over here under more, and then you hit designer, okay? There is your ERD. Now, it's a mess. I don't know why it doesn't clean it up better, but that's all right. But you can drag these, okay? So drag them around until you get something where you don't have any much overlap, okay? When you actually do that, I probably could put this here. Come on, people, you can come up here. And it's just kind of funky how it works. It just kind of takes a little bit to do it, but that's not bad. Okay, I can live with that. This one might be better over here. Then I don't have, try not to get too many overlaps. You see what I'm saying? And then just do a screenshot of this. And that's for your second one as you go through. All right, so what we want to look at is how to do this. Now, where are you going to find out how to do what the assignment? Number one is go through that PowerPoint. Number two, I would open up our scripts. And so if I come out here to 130 and I look to our databases, and let's go look at maybe our company. Okay, open with WordPad. If you notice these, create database right there, constraint. There's a primary key constraint. Okay, it's got the word constraint. It's got the name of the primary key, the word primary key, and what column the primary key is. Okay, it's on the department number. Now, when you get the foreign keys, they get more complicated. This is named foreign key no. It's a foreign key on the department number for this table, references the department number on the department table. And remember, this engine doesn't have to be there. We talked about that before. All right, so what I would do is I would go and I would look at the scripts that we have. Now, we want them right on the table like this. We don't want alter. What is the alter? Well, if you go look at this, when I wrote the zoo one, okay, what I decided to do is to create the tables nice and clean, if you notice this. And then I put alter tables below. Add constraint, alter tables, add constraint, alter tables, add constraint. And I added the constraints below. All right. I did have the primary keys up here. Okay. And notice I named them when you did that, primary keys. But then I altered the table. And it really doesn't matter which way you do it, but we would like you to put them all right on here. So you can list them all one right after the other. So I would look at our scripts that you have as a sample. Okay. Then what are you going to do? You're going to come out here. Oops, not to there. You're going to come out to here. Okay, and you're going to, wherever we're at, doesn't matter, we're going to go to the basic server and we're going to run some SQL. All right, now, first thing you want to run probably is Pete's Paint. And if I go out here and I go to Pete's Paint without constraints, and there it is, so I've got it out there, so let me do this instead. I'm going to import. Just to make sure it works, I'm going to browse and I'm going to go to my databases, Pete's Paint without constraints. And I'm going to import it. And that's wonderful. Okay, I've got lovely Pete's Paint here. I guess it was called Pete's Paint 2. I don't know. There's customer wall, whatever. And so if I go look at that, it is the same thing as what we saw before. Is essentially just creates three tables. That's also in your document if you want to use it from there. And notice the top three to begin with. So you take this and start putting some constraints on it. And the constraints you want on these three tables are the constraints that are on our sheet as you go through and do that. All right. Now, the nice thing is every time you run it, it's going to drop your previous one. Right. So if you make an error, you just run it again, you fix it, run it again, okay, et cetera, when you go through and do that. So for instance, and I just don't want to write a whole lot myself because I'm way too lazy, okay? If I do a real simple thing here, all right, and so I'm going to come out here, I'm going to go to that level. Don't forget to go to that level, go to the SQL, and I'm going to drop database because that's test 123, test 130, which we don't have test 130, but if it exists, it would drop. Otherwise, it just creates it. Create it, use it. Don't forget those three. Create table person, ID, auto increment, not no, auto increment, last name, first name, age, city. Real simple little table. And notice the constraints here. Okay. Now, It gets a little freaky on check constraints, and I'm not sure why. And sometimes I don't keep them, and sometimes it does. It's just kind of weird when you do that, but that's okay. I want you to put yours in. Constraint person, primary key ID, and constraint this. So if I take this guy and I run it, okay, and I now look at test 130, I have that table. Okay, and there it is, and there's no data in it, okay, when you do that. Now, how would you test this? Well, if we go back and look at my script, what I wanted to do was the primary key is the ID, and I put a check constraint in here that the age is greater than 18. Okay, when you do that. So I'm going to take this guy, I'm going to alter it a little bit when I get out here. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this guy, and I'm going to go to SQL, and I'm going to run this, except I'm going to put in, and then MySQL puts weird quotes. I think it's just really weird it does that, but that's all right. There you go. All right. So I got last name, first name, age, and city. And notice I'm trying to put in 12. And remember that we were supposed to be greater than 18. So notice what it says down below. Okay, insert into MySQL said constraint check person failed for test 130 person, because you were trying to check that they were over 18, but indeed they weren't. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll make this 19. I can be 19 years old now. That would be pretty cool. There you go. So insert into persons, the fields, and the values. Now there is an ID in there, don't forget. But notice it got ID 1 because I auto incremented. Okay, and so then if I go back to here, okay, and I do a SQL statement, and I'm going to put in my husband. Why not? He's 14 years old. No, I don't know how old he is. Oh, why not? Oh, there we go. We'll make him 22. That would be cool. He lives in Roanoke. Notice again, I've just put in last name, first name, age, and city, and values for each of those. But notice he became number 2. So that's your auto increment that you can do. All right. And so what you're going to want to do is take that Pete's Paint script, okay, and just build it up. And I would do it one table at a time. It's kind of up to you. But these are the constraints you need to add. They need to be named. That tells you what type they are. Okay, and then some comments. Make sure you read those comments. And once you get your script, the whole script, when you do that, okay, and how you get that whole script, you can export the script, but I would just keep a Notepad++ running and put it in there, and then run it in PHPMyAdmin, and then make your corrections and run it. And then you've got it in Notepad++ and just paste it right in here. And then once you do that, go out to, and of course, mine's not going to be a big deal. Make sure you click on your database, go to more, go to designer, and screenshot that. All right, should be fun. Thanks, guys.